This is TWiT. You said something that's really scary. They go from predicting to influencing. Tell me about that mechanism. Is that happening now?
Well, the reason I wanted to, move through those stages to explain this to our listeners is because once you understand these new economies of action, then the conversation that I have in the book about surveillance capitalism as producing a new quality of power, I call it a new species of power. If I don't explain these underlying mechanisms, you might think, oh boy, Zuboff's writing science fiction. But once you understand these new mechanisms, it's like, oh man, this is already happening. This is all around us.
Yeah,
this is not science fiction.
Our audience is immersed in this. We know this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, being immersed, we're all immersed in it, and that's part of the problem, because when you're immersed in something, it's really hard to notice it.
Yeah.
So part of the service that I've tried to provide is to, not be immersed in it and come around the outside and look at it from a different perspective so that I can name it in a way that has been a bit difficult. So when it comes to this idea of, okay, if we can actually intervene in your behavior and shape your behavior, wow, that's really predictive. Because the whole idea now is for the predictions to approximate observation. You with me?
Yep.
So who needs predictions if we actually know exactly what you're going to do? Because we made you do it, right? So,
but what are the kinds of things? I mean, is it staying in the world of commerce? We're going to make you buy Tide Pods? Or is it something a little darker?
Yeah, well, we've been guinea pigs in the early mass experiments in economies of action. So, you go back to 2012, 13, 14. One of the things that was making big headlines long before we heard of Cambridge Analytica was Facebook's contagion experiments. You remember that?
Tell me, name rings a bell, but I don't remember what they were doing. What you mentioned this in the book. What were they doing?
Yeah, so in the first one, this was around the 2012 midterm elections. And what they were doing was experimenting, obviously, in ways that were carefully designed not to trigger your awareness. So robbing you of the ability to know what they're doing and to opt into an experiment, therefore, which is, of course, violates every tenet of modern human experimentation. But so what they were doing was subtly changing your news feed and subtly planting what we call subliminal cues on the pages that you saw that would nudge you toward voting. For example, they might have messages from your friends coupled with an I voted button. Mm-hmm. And other, very specific kinds of little design tweaks that were aiming at subliminally appealing to these social comparison processes, which is the primary dynamic in social media. I'm me, you're you. Am I better than you? Are you better than me? How do we compare to each other? As all the research shows, these social comparison processes are really the sort of core of what's going on. And it's through those social comparisons that we can persuade people and nudge people to do certain kinds of things. So if I'm comparing myself to you and I think that you're really cool, Leo, and I want to be as cool as you are, and I find out that you voted, then I want to vote too. So
well, this is a good thing. Gets everybody to vote, right?
Yeah, well, until we get to Cambridge Analytica and we discover that not only can we use these exact same methods to get you to vote, but to decide who you're going to vote for, right? And so now we're shifting from, we're usurping your decision rights. We're usurping your rights to self-determination because we're bypassing, by design, your awareness, not giving you a say in whether or not you participate. But now we're also bypassing your ability to be a critical thinker and a morally autonomous thinker, which is the essential individual condition for a functioning democracy. And so we take these same methods that Facebook used in its contagion experiments, which, by the way, it published the results of these experiments in a scholarly journal, literally, crowing with tremendous pride. We've discovered that the online environment is an environment where hidden contagion can be effective. These hidden cues that produce contagion can be effective. This was considered a great achievement. And while everybody around the world was up in arms about this, and people were saying, Facebook can throw an election, Facebook can make us vote for people, this is simply not okay. While that debate was going on, the Facebook folks were already involved in a second large scale, they call it, massive scale contagion experiment on emotions. Maybe you remember that one. That came out the following year, and the idea was, again, these subtle cues planted in your news feed and on your pages that were designed to either make you feel happier or sadder, better or worse.